Paris, unable to speak the language, unable to cope with a gigantic conspiracy which seeks to convince you that you are mad, and you know you are the victim of a plot from which there is no escape.
Escape. Produced and today written by William N. Robeson and carefully contrived to free you from the four walls of today for a half hour of high adventure.
Today we escape to Paris at the time of the Great Paris Exposition, and one of the recurring legends of the 20th century, in Alexander Wolcott's version of the story of the Vanishing Lady.
Another cup of tea, Bruce?
No, thank you, my dear. I'll just light up my pipe now and have a look at the Evening Standard.
I'd like another, please, Mother.
All right, Alice. Only one sugar, dear. We must watch our figures, you know.
Oh, what nonsense. A growing girl like Alice needs plenty of sugar.
See, Mother, Daddy approves.
Perhaps. But Mother is still boss.
Yes, Mother.
There's a dear.
Mother,
Yes, dear.
I've been thinking.
Yes, dear.
I've been thinking about my grandparents.
Oh.
I know all about Daddy's parents. How Grandfather Stanley commanded a dreadnought at the Battle of Jutland.
It was not a dreadnought, Alice. It was a heavy cruiser.
Yes, heavy cruiser. He got the VC, and how Grandmother Stanley was a volunteer nurse at Westall Arch when the Zeppelins came over. And I know about your father, too, and how he died in India from his wounds, and how gallant he was at the Khyber Pass. But, Mother,
Yes, dear.
you've never told me anything about Grandmother Winship.
Haven't I?
No, and I'd like to know something.
Bruce.
The child's 16. I think it's time she knew.
But, Bruce...
And you'd probably feel better to get it off your chest.
What, Mother? What is it?
Well, my dear, I've never talked about your grandmother because I've always half believed that someday, somehow, she'd come down our garden walk and... I know it sounds silly... and explain where she's been for the last 20 years.
Why? What happened to her?
I don't know, and I don't suppose I ever will.
Cynthia, darling, if it's going to upset
No,
you...
Bruce, you're quite right. It would be best to get it off my chest, as you put it. As you know, Alice, I was born and brought up in India. And I was about your age when my father was killed in the Khyber campaign. Mother decided to leave India for good and return to her old home in Warwickshire. However, since it was necessary for her to go to Paris to attend to some details of my father's estate, she decided we should leave the P&O boat in Marseille and proceed by train. You may imagine the timidity with which we two unescorted ladies traveled across France, without the slightest knowledge of the language, and without indeed assurance we could find a hotel room in Paris, though we had telegraphed for reservations from Marseille. You see, dear, the Great Paris Exposition had just opened, and the city was jammed with visitors from all over the world. You may imagine our relief when we arrived at the Grand Hotel Universel and heard the clerk speak in quite understandable English.
Mademoiselle Winship, welcome. You will please to sign the register here and here.
You have our reservation.
Oh, indeed, yes. Oh, most fortunate, madame, that you telegraphed. I reserve for you the last room in the house.
Oh, I'm so relieved. Here, Cynthia. You may as well learn now to sign a register for yourself.
Oh, yes, Mamma. Where do I write?
There in that line.
Oh, yes, I see.
Voila. You are fatigué from your journey, no? I shall have the boy show you to your rooms at once. Chasseur! Chasseur!
Oui, monsieur.
L'appartement 342 pour madame et mademoiselle Winship, tout de suite.
Bien, monsieur.
This is your baggage, madame?
Yes, these 6.
Là voilà le bagage. Il y a
Cynthia.
6 pièces.
Entendu.
You'd best carry the little one with the medicine in it.
Yes, Mamma.
Permettez-moi, mademoiselle.
Thank you. I'll take that one. The little red one?
Très bien. This way, ladies.
Keep your eye on that porter, Cynthia. I don't trust this Frenchman.
Oh, Mamma. I don't think he'll make off with our things. Oh, here's the lift.
3e étage.
3e.
Oh, I do wish we could have gone straight on to Southampton.
But you'd only have had to come back across the channel to see the solicitor, Mamma. We really save time this way.
I suppose I wish we hadn't come to Paris at all. Such a sinister place.
Oh, Mamma.
Voilà, le 3e.
This way, ladies, to the right. Attendez.
C'est bien.
338, 343, 340... Oh, voilà. Entrez, ladies.
Thank you.
Oh, what a lovely big room. And look, Mamma. French windows. Oh, and the park out there, and that square with the statues. on
The
it.
ladies desire.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Merci.
Oh,
Thank you,
those
ladies.
beautiful, beautiful bridges. Oh, Mamma, it's like something out of a book.
Yes, my dear. That's the trouble with Paris. It's so attractive. But underneath it's evil.
Oh, and Mamma, the furniture, the gilt clock, and this lovely marble-top table. Oh, Mamma, everything is so French.
I'll be very glad to be on my way to where everything's English by this time tomorrow. Now, come away from that window and help me get into something comfortable. There's a dear.
Yes, Mamma, of course.
I don't know when I've been so tired. I just can't seem to catch my...
Mamma. Mamma, what's the matter? Mamma. Mamma, speak to me. Oh, here, I'll get you up into bed. There. Now let me loosen your corset. Here, Mamma, here are the smelling salts. Breathe deeply, darling. Mamma. The telephone. I've got to get a doctor.
À votre service?
Hello, operator. Will you please send a doctor up to room number... let me see. Number 342.
Pardon? Qu'est-ce que mademoiselle désire?
Will you please send a doctor to room number 342?
Je ne comprends pas. Qu'est-ce que
A
mademoiselle
doctor,
désire?
a doctor, please.
Ah, oui, un docteur. Oui, mademoiselle, tout de suite.
While I waited for the doctor, I did everything I could think of to bring my mother back to consciousness. I massaged her fingers and toes. I put wet cloths on her forehead. I waved the smelling salts under her nose. But she lay silent and white and unmoving, like one dead. Only the quick, shallow movement of her breast assured me she was not. And all the time another anxiety possessed me. What if this doctor could not speak English? How should I tell him the circumstances of Mother's unexpected fainting? How should I understand his instructions for treatment? I'm sure it was not long, although it seemed like an eternity before he arrived, accompanied by the manager of the hotel. And to my great relief, they both spoke English. The doctor felt Mother's pulse, took her temperature, and did the usual things that doctors do. And then he turned to the tail-coated hotel manager.
La jeune femme parle-t-elle français?
Pas un mot.
Vous en êtes sûr?
Tout à fait.
Alors, je peux parler à mon aise. Monsieur, ceci, c'est une affaire très sérieuse. N'ayez pas l'air alarmé lorsque je vous mets au courant. Cette femme est atteinte de la peste.
La peste?
Elle n'a qu'une heure à vivre. Je n'ai pas besoin de vous dire que si ceci se connaît, votre hôtel perdra tous ses clients.
Mais mon Dieu, et pas seulement
While they talked in this language I couldn't understand, I looked from one face to the other, trying to read from their expressions how serious my mother's illness was. But they were as casual as though they were ordering dinner. And finally I could stand it no longer. Oh, you must tell me. What is the matter with her?
Mademoiselle, your mother is ill, yes. Seriously ill. It is a collapse, due perhaps to the strain of traveling. However, a week or two of absolute rest will work
A week
wonders.
or two? Well, we were to go on to England tomorrow.
That would be out of the question, mademoiselle. She cannot be moved for at least several days. Right now, she must have complete rest. The next 24 hours will be critical.
Oh, Mamma. Poor Mamma.
No, mademoiselle, you must not break down, too. I need your help.
Yes, Doctor.
Immediately, I need some medicine. Will you fetch it for me?
Why,
I must not
yes.
leave your mother for a moment during these critical hours. Here, I will write down this address and a little message to my wife.
Your wife?
Yes. I have the medicine already prepared at home. It will be faster to go there for it than to a pharmacy. There are very few chemists who have the ingredient.
But couldn't you telephone?
Hélas, I have no telephone.
Well, a messenger, perhaps.
Mademoiselle does not know Paris en fête. With the exposition opening, nowhere can you find a reliable messenger. They are all selling souvenirs.
But,
Oh, no, mademoiselle. You will accomplish the errand more rapidly yourself.
Here is the address, 24 bis Rue Val-de-Grâce. And here is the message to give to my wife.
But I don't know Paris at all. I'm a total stranger here.
I am sure the manager here will give the necessary instructions to the cabby.
Indeed, I will. Now, if mademoiselle is ready...
Before I quite knew what was happening, I was seated in a rickety taxicab outside the hotel with the doctor's message clutched in my hand, while the hotel manager gave valuable directions to the cabby.
En plus, vous toucherez un pourboire assez grand pour remplacer cette vieille bagnole avec une belle voiture. Allez au petit pas. Prenez la piste la plus circuiteuse et surtout, ne soyez pas de retour en moins de 2 heures. Entendu?
Entendu.
Bon. It is arranged, mademoiselle. Jacques is one of our most trusted cabbies. He will get you to the doctor's house and back in safety.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. And you will look after Mother, won't you?
Indeed, I will. Of that, you may be sure.
When we left the hotel, we crossed a huge square with statues around it and turned into a wide avenue which led up a gentle incline, at the top of which was a huge arch. But before long, we turned off to the right into narrower streets. It must have been 20 minutes later when we turned into another wide boulevard and I saw another huge arch up ahead. Or was it the same arch? Driver!
Mademoiselle!
Haven't we passed that arch before?
Regardez, mademoiselle. Voici l'Arc de Triomphe. Là-bas, la Tour Eiffel.
Driver, I don't want a sightseeing tour. I want to go to this address directly. Don't you understand? Now, please take me there at once.
Eh ben, on fait de son mieux. De la patience, mademoiselle. Paris, c'est une grande ville, voyons.
At last, we turned into a narrow street and pulled up before a grim grey house. The blue enamel sign on the wall read number 24 bis. I jumped out of the cab almost before it stopped, rushed up the 3 stone steps and pulled at the brass bell knob. Oh, hurry, 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 please.
Oui?
Oh, the doctor sent me for some medicine. Here, read this, please.
Retenez cette jeune femme aussi longtemps possible. C'est de la plus grande importance pour l'avenir de Paris et même de la France. Oh! Entrez, mademoiselle.
Thank you.
Quand vous ne pouvez plus la faire attendre, donnez-lui une bouteille de pastilles.
The doctor's wife stood there reading and rereading the note as though she didn't understand it. And until I thought I would scream. Please, please hurry. Get me the medicine. It's my mother. She may be dying. I must get back to her. Please hurry.
Asseyez-vous.
She pointed to a chair.
Attendez.
And slowly walked down the hall and closed the door behind her. I waited and waited. And I wondered. Wondered about the time the taxi had taken to get here. About that arch that looked so familiar. And I was torn by the 100 nameless anxieties that torture you when your nearest and dearest is ill. And then I heard something that froze my blood. A telephone. A telephone clearly ringing somewhere in the house. But the doctor had said he had no telephone. That was the reason I must come all this way for the medicine. Oh, no, it couldn't be in this house. It must be next door or across the street. Of course, that's where the sound was coming from.
Allô?
But no.
Qui parle? Oui.
It was the voice of the doctor's wife answering the phone. Oh, no. No, what monstrous plot was this? I felt my scalp crawl with terror. My brain pounded and my head felt as though it would burst. I wanted to scream, to run out of this awful house, to run all the way across Paris to the bedside of my mother.
Voilà, mademoiselle.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Au revoir, mademoiselle.
Now, driver, please, please, in the name of your own mother, hurry back to the hotel as fast as possible, please.
Ben oui. On fait de son mieux, mademoiselle. Roulons.
But my pleading was of no use. Either it was misunderstood or ignored. We crawled across Paris, just as slowly as we had come. And I was certain I saw that same white arch 3 times. But at last we crossed the great square with the statues. And I knew we were close to the hotel. Oh, please, please hurry.
Zut, on fait de son mieux, mademoiselle, voyons.
Just beyond the great square, we turned up a narrow street which shortly entered a wide circle, in the middle of which was a tall, slender monument. The driver swung around the monument and pulled up before the entrance of the hotel, reached back and opened the door.
Nous voilà, mademoiselle.
I jumped out of the cab. And then I saw the sign over the entrance. It said, Hotel Ritz. Driver? Driver, you've taken me to the wrong hotel. I'm staying at the Grand Hotel Universal.
Mais non, mademoiselle, je vous ai pris au Ritz. Et je vous dépose au Ritz.
No, I don't understand what you're saying, but will you please take me to the Grand Hotel Universal?
C'est ici que je vous ai pris en charge et c'est ici que je vous
Oh,
dépose.
you stupid man, can't you understand? My mother is sick. You've taken more than 2 hours to get me to the doctor's house and back. Can't you understand? My mother is sick, perhaps dying.
Les affaires de mademoiselle ne me regardent pas.
I looked around me. A small group of passers-by had stopped and were listening curiously to the argument. And then they joined in, taking sides. Everywhere I looked were foreign faces. Strangers, enemies. And then, shouldering through the crowd, I saw a bare-headed young man in tweeds, with a pipe clamped in his teeth. And before he had a chance to speak, I knew help had come.
I say, having some trouble.
Oh, thank heavens, you're English.
Right you are. Now, what seems to be the matter?
I told him as rapidly as I could, and he paid the mulish cabbie. He popped me into another cab. 5 minutes later, we walked up into the lobby of the Grand Hotel Universal. The manager was behind the desk. My mother, is she all right?
I beg your pardon, mademoiselle.
My mother, Mrs. Winship in 342, is she all right?
There is no Madame Winship in 3242.
What?
342 is occupied by Monsieur Auguste Noailles, a permanent guest.
But don't you remember me? I'm Cynthia Winship. 2 hours ago, you put me into a taxi to go to the doctor's house for some medicine for my mother.
I am afraid that mademoiselle is mistaken. I have never seen her before in my life.
Well, look here, what is this?
No, listen, I swear to you. It's just as I say. We signed the register less than 3 hours ago. We got in on the train from Marseille.
Well, let's have a look at the register.
Yes. I'll show you I'm in 342. Where is the register?
It is there, mademoiselle. You may see it for yourself. See today's date. 14 guests registered, but I do not see any mademoiselle or Madame Winship. Do you?
No. What have you done with my mother?
Please,
what have you done with my mother? I
mademoiselle,
demand you answer me this minute.
Mademoiselle,
What have you done with...
I should not like to have to ask you to leave.
Miss Winship, please. We get to the bottom of this.
Perhaps mademoiselle is mistaken. Perhaps she is registered at some other hotel.
No. This is the hotel. The Grand Universal. You were standing there when we arrived. You handed my mother the pen with which she registered. You came to the door with a doctor. You put me in a taxi.
But I assure you, mademoiselle, these are fantastic.
Wait a minute.
Your fantasies
What is
of
it?
yours,
That
is all.
bellboy there. He carried our baggage. He'll remember.
Garçon.
Oui, monsieur.
Vous vous souvenez d'avoir porté le bagage de madame au numéro 342 cet après-midi?
Non, monsieur.
There were 6 pieces, don't you remember? You wanted to take them all, and I insisted on carrying the little jewel case. It was a little red one.
Oh, non, mademoiselle. C'est la première fois de ma vie que je vois mademoiselle.
He says he never saw you in his life before.
But this is monstrous. It's impossible. My mother is somewhere in this hotel. What have you done with her? What have you done with her?
Feeling better now, Miss Winship?
A little, thank you.
Care for something else?
No, thank you. Another cup of tea, perhaps.
Certainly. Garçon?
Monsieur?
Une tasse de thé pour mademoiselle.
Tout de suite, monsieur.
I don't know how to thank you, Mr. You realize I don't even know your name?
Oh, it's Bruce. Bruce Stanley.
I'm very glad to meet you, Mr. Stanley.
It's a pleasure, Miss Winship.
Mr. Stanley, you believe me, don't you?
Of course I do, Miss
We did
Winship.
register at that hotel. We were in room 342. Why, I can even describe the furnishings. There was a big window that went from the ceiling to the floor.
Well, every hotel room in Paris has windows like that, Miss Winship.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Well, in this room, the draperies were plum-colored, and there was a marble-top table, black marble it was, and a gilt clock it had run down. The hands had stopped, I remember, at 20 minutes past 3. The walls were covered in rose brocade, and the bedspread was a washed-out yellow. Oh, if I could only get into that room, you'd see that I'm not making this up.
I'm sure you aren't. Perhaps I can find a way to make them let you in the room.
Can you?
Yes. I'm with the embassy, undersecretary sort of thing. I believe the British Empire has enough influence to change the mind of an obstinate Paris innkeeper.
Well, then let's do it. Right away.
Well, I'm afraid the might of Britain can't move that fast. It's past dinner time. But tomorrow we shall see.
Tomorrow? But I must get into that room tonight. I have no money. Nowhere to sleep.
Well, we can do nothing with the people at the hotel. You saw that. We'll just have to be patient until tomorrow. I'm sure I can find a room for you tonight in a pension near the embassy.
You're so very kind. How can I ever thank you, Mr. Stanley?
Well, you might begin by calling me Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Oh.
What is it?
I just thought of something. The doctor.
The doctor?
Yes, the one the hotel manager brought in to look after Mother. I still have his address somewhere here in my purse. Yes, here it is. Now, we must go there immediately. He can tell us about Mother.
Now, let me see. 24 bis Rue Val de Gras. Well, that's not far. Just off Boulevard Raspail near the Luxembourg.
Well, how long would it take to get there by taxi?
Oh, about 10 minutes.
But it took over an hour this afternoon.
Voilà, monsieur. 24 bis, Rue Val de Grâce.
Well, here we are.
Yes, this is the place.
Attendez, mon vieux.
Ah, très bien, monsieur.
The house is dark.
Well, it's quite late.
Well, I don't care. We've got to find out tonight.
Qui est là? Qui sonne?
Where is he?
There at the upstairs window. Monsieur le docteur, c'est mademoiselle Winship. Elle veut vous questionner à propos de sa mère.
Winship? Je ne connais pas mademoiselle Winship.
He says he doesn't know you.
But he must. He must. Doctor, don't you remember this afternoon? You sent me here to your house for medicine for my mother.
Je ne comprends pas l'anglais.
He says he doesn't understand English.
Oh, the liar. The dreadful liar. He does. He speaks perfect English.
Et vous, jeune homme, je vous conseille de ne pas déranger le repos des gens comme il faut et de vous en aller avant que je n'appelle la police.
I'm sorry, Cynthia.
Oh, Bruce. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? If it hadn't been for Bruce, I'm certain I should have gone out of my mind. He found a room for me at a pension near the embassy, where I spent a sleepless night of anxiety, almost beyond endurance. Bruce called for me at 10:30 the next morning and took me back to the hotel. To my surprise, the attitude of the manager had changed completely.
But of course, mademoiselle may inspect room 342. We are only too glad to convince mademoiselle that her mother is not and never was in the Grand Hotel Universel.
Why,
I personally will escort you to the room. This way, please, to the ascenseur.
Oh, Bruce, that terrible man. That horrible,
Cynthia,
horrible...
Cynthia, don't let him upset you.
Monsieur, au troisième. Troisième, monsieur.
Now, remember what I told you last night, Bruce. You'll see. Plum-colored draperies, black marble-top table, rose walls, and a gilt clock with hands stopped at 20 minutes past 3. You'll see.
Yes, Cynthia.
Voilà, le troisième. This way, please. It was room 342 that you wished to see, mademoiselle?
Yes, that's right. Third door to the right.
Parfait.
You see, Bruce? I know where it is.
Yes, my dear.
Here we are. Voila. Enter, please.
Now, Bruce, you'll see. The yellow bedspread... Oh.
Not quite the room you just described in the elevator, mademoiselle. The drapes are royal blue.
No.
A little dusty, I fear. I must have this room renovated. You see, there is no marble-top table.
No.
The clock, as you notice, is running. And right on time, it seems. And the walls are not rose bouquets, but yellow-flowered wallpaper. Now, my dear mademoiselle, you see how thoroughly mistaken you are.
No, no, no! They had tried to make me think I was mad. They succeeded. I remembered nothing until I awoke in my aunt's house in England 2 weeks later, thanks to Bruce, who never left my side during those terrible days when my sanity hung in the balance. Well, that's the story, Alice. And that's why I've never been able to talk about your grandmother Winship.
Oh, Mother, how horrible.
Because all these years I've clung to the foolish hope that somehow she'd come back and tell us herself what happened.
You poor dear.
You may as well dispel that hope forever, Cynthia.
What?
Since you at last brought yourself to discuss your mother's disappearance, I think it's time you knew the true fact.
Bruce.
Your mother died 20 minutes after you left the hotel on that fool's errand for the doctor.
Oh, no.
She died of the bubonic plague. She had caught it in India before she sailed. The doctor recognized the symptoms the moment he examined her. He told the hotel manager in French in your presence. They agreed that the matter must be kept completely secret. If the news leaked out that there was a case of plague in Paris, the city would have been emptied of visitors, and the exposition would have been a failure.
Oh, Bruce.
The conspiracy of silence began in the hotel. The bellboy was paid to claim he never saw you. The taxi driver was paid well to take you to the doctor's house by the most roundabout route. The note to the doctor's wife advised her to detain you as long as she could. The taxi driver added his own imaginative touch by returning you to the Ritz instead of the Universal. I shudder to think what might have happened if I hadn't come through the Place Vendôme just then.
But you didn't know?
Not then.
When did you find out?
Next morning. By then, the conspiracy had grown to international proportions. The embassy had been advised. If the exposition was a failure, the franc would fall and the pound sterling would be affected, that sort of thing, you know. I knew when we went back to the hotel you would not find your plum drapes and rose-colored walls and black marble-top table.
And you let me go through with that?
What could I do? I was acting under orders. I knew that the hotel had completely fumigated and redecorated the room overnight, and everything was in readiness to repudiate your story. I had to let the last act of the dreadful farce play to its dreadful end.
What did they do with my mother?
Her body was removed from the room less than 30 minutes after you left it. It immediately burned.
Why? Why didn't you tell me all this years ago? Why did you let me go on all this time?
This is the first time you've ever mentioned your mother since then, my dear.
Alice?
Yes, Mother?
There's a new issue of the Tatler in the library. Wouldn't you like to look at it?
But, Mother, I want...
Now, dear, there's a good girl. I want to have a talk with your father.
Escape, produced by William N. Robeson and directed by Norman MacDonald, has brought you The Vanishing Lady by Alexander Woollcott, freely adapted for radio by Mr. Robeson. The part of Cynthia was played by Joan Banks. Bruce was played by Hy Averback. The hotel manager and driver by Ramsey Hill. Musical score was conceived by Cy Fewer with Eddie Dunstetter at the console. Next week...
You are deathly afraid of snakes. And between you and a fortune, between you and escape, you're on the white jaws of a deadly cottonmouth.
Next week, we escape with Irvin S. Cobb's famous story, Snake Doctor. Goodbye, then, until this same time next week, when we again offer you Escape. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
You are standing at the doorway of a cabin on Cashier Creek. Up on the ridge, the bloodhounds have your scent. And between you and a fortune, between you and escape, yawn the white jaws of a deadly cottonmouth.
Escape, produced by William N. Robeson and carefully contrived to free you from the four walls of today for a half hour of high adventure.
Tonight we escape to the worn-out acres of a poor white trash farmer somewhere in the southern mountains. In Irvin S. Cobb's great tale of vengeance, Snake Doctor.
This story is about snakes and two men. One man was afraid of snakes and the other wasn't. The one who wasn't was known along Cashier Creek as Snake Doctor. His cabin was near the creek bottom land where there was a powerful lot of cottonmouths. And he earned his meager living by rendering down their soft fats and bottling the oil and selling it. For everyone knew there was no remedy for rheumatism like snake oil. Snake Doctor was harmless enough, but there was folks who honestly believed that he was a colleague of Beelzebub just 'cause he wasn't afraid of snakes. That's not all they believed about him. Now, the man who was afraid of snakes was Jafe Morner, who was Snake Doctor's nearest neighbor. Jafe was the kind of man we all know who suspected, feared, and hated anything he didn't understand. And he understood neither Cottonmouths nor the Snake Doctor. In short, Jafe was ornery, ignorant, and shiftless. He'd rather shoot squirrels and chop cotton. He'd rather fish than hoe corn. And that's just what he's doing now, fishing, down at the Big Hole with his son and heir, Finney, who's old enough, but not quite bright enough to handle a gun.
Missed him, dog.
Finney, you blame fool! I told you not.
Oh, trump on him before he gets in the creek.
What?
The cottonmouth. Trump on him in front of you.
What the vomit?
Yeah, you got him. Keep your foot on him while I get a stick.
You don't need to, son. He's dead. Now come here.
Pa, how'd you ever hit anything in that rifle, Pa? I had a bead drawn on him, right?
You damn
and I couldn't...
fool!
Oh, Pa.
Fine off at a blame snake whilst I'm fishing.
Heck, you was sunning yourself not more than there to you. How'd you like to get yourself bit?
Won't be no fish around here till thunderation after all that racket. Well, come on home. Let's go get some victuals.
Jafe Morner tossed his bait can into the creek and threw a stick after it. He stood there, watching the stick drift slowly toward the Big Hole, where the creek widened behind a jam of driftwood. Jafe watched as the eddy caught the stick and sucked it beneath the dam. Jafe was curious. He moved downstream a rod or two and waited, watching the water boil up from under the driftwood. But the stick didn't come up. That was strange. Must have caught under there in a tangle of water-soaked and sunken logs. Probably it'd stay there for months. Maybe stay there always. Jafe considered this, and an idea began to form in his slow mind as he and Finney started for home.
Hey, Pa. How much oil you reckons in this one, Pa? Pa?
What you jawing about?
This old cottonmouth. How much oil do you
Throw
reckon?
it down.
Throw it down? Why? I'm in the
Throw it down like I say. I'll make you wish
Pa, I was aiming on rendering the old cottonmouth's fat like the Snake Doctor does and sell and make myself some money.
I don't like to squirming things around me.
Yeah, but it's dead.
Leave it where it dropped, Finney. Now come on home.
You scared of cottonmouths, Pa?
I know better than to get myself bit by him.
Tip Bailey knowed a fella got himself bit once. He won a drop of liquor for miles. So he goes to work and he cuts open a little old live chicken and puts it on his leg where the bite was. And the fella lived, too.
Yeah.
Reckon Mr. Rise ever gets himself bit handling cottonmouths like he does?
Who?
Mr. Rives.
Who?
Mr. Rives, the old snake doctor's real name. Ma says I oughtn't call him snake doctor.
Never mind what your ma says. Nobody in my family's calling no snake-loving scum Mr. Rives.
Heck, that's what I say, Pa.
We'll just see what you do.
Sure, Pa. You know, I could have made myself some money rendering that cottonmouth fat down into oil. How much you reckon old snake doctor makes out in the oil he sells?
I don't know.
Tip Bailey says old snake doctor's got more than maybe $1,000 hid away somewhere in his cabin.
More than that, most likely. Cussed old miser don't spend nothing. Ain't got nothing save that old rack of bones mare of his.
Tip Bailey says whenever old snake doctor sets foot out in his place, he's got the granddaddy of all cottonmouths that he leaves out in the cabin to stand guard on his money.
Huh.
Yeah, Tip Bailey says that, he'd see old snake doctor put him in his pocket. Live cottonmouths.
Snake doctor ain't fitting to be live himself.
Oh, Ma says he ain't bad. Says he don't mean nobody harm.
Your ma better be careful who she's associating with.
Well, she says he doesn't have any good sense. Had the fever too much. You ever been in the snake doctor's cabin, Pa?
I don't have nothing more than I have to do with that snake-loving hoodoo.
Tip Bailey says that he bet it wouldn't be no task at all for some no good to poke around in the snake doctor's shack and find all the money and make off with it. Well, this blamed sons are down there rendering me down. Look at my head, Pa. It's all full of sweat. Look it. See, there's all full of sweat. Down there, gourd full of sweat coming off. Why turn it down that way, Pa? Coming on noon, dinner'll be most ready.
I'm going to tell that snake-loving hoodoo that there's some of them cottonmouths on the creek side of Deadland.
Heck, he knows that.
I'm going to tell him he's got my leave to catch him. You don't need to come along if you don't want to.
And if you're going over to his place, I'd kind of go and see it for myself. Go on in, Pa. He ain't to home, else why's he to show himself by now?
I reckon so.
Pa, can you see any snakes?
I told you to keep an eye out for it.
I bet it's in one of them chinks, Pa. Pa, I bet the money's up in
I
one
ain't
of them
looking
chinks.
for no money. Must be a dang snake itself living in a place like this.
Pa, I know you ain't looking for any money, but if you was, wouldn't you look in that chink right up there?
Where, son?
Right there, second log above the fireplace. On the right, you see that there hole?
Yeah. Yeah, I reckon I would look up there.
Well, since we're here...
Might as well see for myself.
Pa, I wouldn't be a mite surprised if old Snake Doctor... Pa?
Huh?
Somebody's out on the porch. It's a snake doctor.
What? Are you looking for something, Chief Mortar?
Yeah, I was looking for you.
I want you.
Yeah. Look here, you old hoodoo. What's the idea of sneaking up on folks who took the trouble to come all the way down here to do you a favor?
Chief Mourner and his boys slouched out onto 6-acre deadening. They walked silently, unnerved by their encounter with the snake doctor. Finally, it was Finney who broke the silence.
Yes, sir. Like as not that old snake doctor had a dang moccasin squitching around in his pocket whilst he was talking to you. Do you mind how his eyes was when he come in? Dang if it wasn't blazing like when you run across a rabbit or a cat in the dark. Scared me out of 10 years' growth, dang if it didn't. And you mind how I kept looking up at the wall where I said I bet he had his money between the chinks?
Finney.
Hmm?
Finney, don't you say nothing to your ma about us being at that snake doctor's place. You understand?
Why should I?
Just don't. Don't you know go nigh it again. Cuss old varmint, you'd have thought we was prowlers the way he acted.
Billy, that you out there?
Yeah, Ma. Dinner about ready?
Is all with you, son?
Yeah. Have I time enough for dinner to go down to the spring and get me some cold water?
Well, that's when you stir your stumps again.
Hurry up, son. I'm hungry.
Catch any, son, Jay?
How you think I can catch fish with Fenny flying off my gun and cottonmouths all the time?
Ain't this heat more than a body can bear?
Yeah.
Any cooler by the creek?
Now,
Poor old Miss Rives come by here a spell ago. My nigh shook to pieces with the chill.
oh, he come by, did he? Well, did he come in?
Just for a minute.
Oh, just for a minute, eh? What'd he want?
He wanted could I give him something for his ailment. Just about could drag one sour foot for the other. Barely could make it up here from his place. Reckon he must be down in bed with the fever by now. I could tell by the touch was rising in him when he left here and started back home again. I give him a dose out in our butler's acre draft. Would have given him a little smidgen of liquor on
Oh,
that.
you would, huh?
Oh, please don't, Jeff. Don't, Jeff. Don't whop me. Just poor old Miss Rives.
Mr. Rives! Mr. Rives! How many times I gotta tell you that old hoodoo's name is Snake Doctor?
He don't mean nobody no harm.
Him it'd skin a louse for its hide and tallow, and you calling him Mr. Rives. You'd be calling him Honey and Sugar next without I learn you better.
Please, Dave, please.
Pet names, huh? Tell by the touch, could you? Well, I aim to learn you. What's his name now? Well, what's your poor Mr. Rives' name now?
Snake Doctor.
Kizzy Marner rubbed the ugly red welt on her scrawny arm and gave the frying pan full of sizzling side meat a hopeless nudge. She prayed that the weight of the victuals might take the edge off Jafe's temper. Finney slouched in from the spring and saw the mark on her arm.
Pa been whomping you again, Ma?
She didn't answer.
What'd you do this time?
She silently dished up the hogback and cornbread for her two men, and while they sat at table, she ate on her feet, serving them between bites, as was the custom in the Marner household. After dinner, Finney stretched out under the chinaberry tree, and Kizzy sat on the porch, fanning herself and dipping snuff with a peach twig, scouring it back and forth on her gums. Jafe took his ease on the floor of the back room, but he didn't sleep. One thing he had seen that day, and another thing he had heard. He was adding them together. That stick that had disappeared under the log jam, and the snake doctor's money. It was 4 o'clock before any of them stirred, and then Jafe spoke to his wife for the first time since noon.
Where's that bottle of drinking liquor, Kizzy?
By the window. You took it out in your pocket before you laid down.
I ought to carry a vial of drinking liquor with me. I might get bit by a moccasin soon as Pa would.
You better not let me catch you. You find it, Jay?
I just remembered I won't be needing to tote no spits along with me while I'm going.
I wouldn't take no chance, Jay. There's one cottonmouth.
Cottonmouths is all down the slashes, else along the creek. Where I'll be this evening is up along Bailey's Ridge in the high ground.
You fixing to go shooting?
Yeah, I aim to gun me a chance of young squirrels between now and dust time.
Reckon I'll come along, Pa.
You stay in here.
Oh, dang it. It'd be steaming in the place when the rain comes down. Pa, you might be needing me in case...
You stay here.
Oh, Pa.
Kizzy set up a snack of cold supper on the shelf. Likely I won't get back till it's plumb dark.
Chief Marner turned north through his struggling cornrows, and in a minute he was lost from sight. He kept on for nearly a mile until he came to a wild red mulberry tree. Where mulberries are, there's bound to be squirrels. Very neatly, he shot 2 young grays through the head. For Jafe was a master marksman, and unsuspected by any who knew him. Jafe had another quality denied most of his kind. He had an imagination. Today it was in excellent working order. He tied the brain squirrels together and swung them over his shoulder. If needed, they would be his alibi. Then he sat down under a tree a while.
I got plenty of time. Don't need to get down to Snake Doctor's place till it's about dusk when he comes out to feed that swayback mare of his'n. Mr. Rhymes.
He sat out 2 brisk thunder showers and the intervals between them. Then he started off in a wide arc down Bailey's Branch, along the skirts of Little Cypress Lash, to the sunken flats edging Cashier Creek. Took more than an hour of careful traveling before he came to his destination, a screen of haw bushes less than 50 yards behind the Snake Doctor's cabin.
No matter how ailing he is, he'd get up and come out to feed that rack of Boone's mare. Mr. Rhymes. Well, I'll learn him to go colleaguing around another man's woman.
Chief Mourner let his jealousy heat him to a white hatred. At this moment, he was avenging his honor. Thus was spared the embarrassment of admitting to himself that the real reason he was here was the Snake Doctor's money, hidden behind the log by the fireplace.
A home-loving, snake-loving varmint. 10 minutes from now, I'll chunk him down a big hole in the creek like I did that stick this morning. He'd go down and never come out. Nobody'll miss him. Nobody'll know he's gone for leastwise a week, maybe a month. Maybe if I get around to it, I might come back this way someday. Poke around that cabin of his'n.
Chief Mourner's speculations were cut short. The cabin door opened and a figure stepped out into the growing dusk and walked toward the stable. He saw the Snake Doctor's loppy old straw hat and his dark coat drawn over a pair of hunched, narrow shoulders. At this distance, he couldn't miss. And he didn't. The figure jerked backwards and then went face forward. Jafe started for him, and then he stopped. His eyes bugged. His mouth formed a scream that he couldn't utter. His rifle dropped to the ground. He had just killed the Snake Doctor, killed him dead with a .32 caliber slug through the head. And there on his doorsill stood Snake Doctor, whole and sound and staring at him.
Chief Mourner, what you done?
The scream came at last, for Jafe Mourner had seen the devil, this Snake Doctor who arose alive from his bullet-riddled body. Jafe whirled and ran into the deep, darkening woods, whimpering like a whipped puppy as he tore through the brush. Escape. He must escape. He must get under the shelter of a sound roof, have the protection of 4 walls around him. So he ran and ran for hours. It was close to midnight when he came out on a dirt road a short distance southeast of his deadening. Beyond the next bend, he'd be in sight of home. Then he stopped. Around the bend, coming toward him, was a joggling light, a lantern hanging on a buggy. Jake flattened himself in a clump of brush to hide until the traveler passed. And then, just as the rig was opposite him, he heard a call coming from the other direction.
There. Who's he jogging? Whoa there. Steady. It's me. It's Davis Ware. Is that you, Tip Belly?
Yep. Wolfing it out from the junction. Tolerable tired, if anybody should ask you. What brings you out this time of night, Davy? Somebody sick?
Sick? Nothing. There's been hella popping in these here bottoms tonight. Steady, boy. Steady.
Now, what you mean?
A killing. That's what I mean. A dirty, cold-blooded killing if there ever was one.
Don't say. Who's got a kill?
Well, I'm a-fixing to tell you now. Steady, who? It happened just around dusk time at old Snake Doctor's place.
Yeah? Was it him was killed?
Now, just give me time.
Uh-huh.
Seems like Snake Doctor's been a-chilling lately. He's pretty bad off today. I mean, yesterday.
Uh-huh.
So, along about 5 o'clock, when the rain was a-lulling a little bit, Miss Kizzy Mourner, she fuddled it down from her place to his and fetching some physic with her and played a hot visit.
Miss Mourner's a mighty thoughty one for doing things for
Don't
folk.
you want to hear this?
Go ahead.
Well, it seems like she wasn't afeard of the Snake Doctor's place.
Well, I'd have been. I'll own to that.
Well, pretty soon after she got there, seems like he tried to get up out of his bed and go feed that old crowbait nag of his.
Yeah?
Rain had started in again, but then just pouring down hard, so she made him stay where he was at, and she put on his old hat and throwed on his old coat around her to keep off the worst of the wet. And then she started out the back door to do the feeding herself.
Yeah.
And no more'n she got outside, and a shot come from the edge of the wood, and down she went with a bullet through her brain.
Killed her?
Deader'n a dog.
But who done it?
That low-flung husband of hers done it. That's who done it. He must have followed her down to Snake Doctor's and just laid in wait for her.
Certain 'twas him, then, huh?
Why, sure thing. Snake Doctor jumped up when he heard the shot, and
he catched a quick look at Jape over the fence.
Yeah?
Oh, and there was a long streak on Kiz's arm where he must have whooped her at during the day.
Well, Hank's sight too good. Catch him?
No, but they will. Some thinks that he made for the slashes and hid out there. Tracks led old fat away.
Uh-huh.
Oh, there'd be a line of men throwed all the way around Little Cypress before sunup.
Sheriff got there yet?
No, but he's due any minute with his pack of dogs. They telephoned in from Gallup Mills that he's on his way.
Good.
Trail ought to lay good, too, the ground being damp like it is.
Mm-hmm.
Old Snake Doctor, he's crying on and raving around up at Mourner's place saying the Lord's going to strike the murder down his tracks. But I'm a-putting my main dependence on them there bloodhounds. On them first, and then maybe on a stout plow line and a limb of a tree.
Yeah, it's more certain.
Yeah, I'm just putting out from my place to fetch my oldest boy. I wouldn't want him to miss a lynching. Oh, he's a good-sized crowd up there already.
Well, I'll go up and join him. I got a pistol here in my hip pocket.
No.
Oh, Miss Mourner, she's always good-hearted, hard-working
Kizzy.
woman.
She's dead. I shot Kizzy.
Did you hear something just then?
Can't say they're dead.
Probably a rabbit breaking through the brass.
Hey, listen. Yeah. Oh, a sheriff's coming. You can hear them hounds a hissing. I got to hurry. Get up there, Biffy.
I'll see you back in the morning.
Oh, you sure will.
Jafe didn't have time to waste mourning his dead wife. He was even a little relieved to know that the snake doctor wasn't the devil incarnate. He had a chance against a lynch mob and a pack of bloodhounds. This was the kind of antagonist he could understand and outsmart. Jafe's imagination went to work again as he backtracked along the creek bottom in the spotted moonlight.
Gotta throw them dogs off the trail. Gotta wade a creek, even if it is full of cottonmouths. Must be all around me by now. Folks say they don't strike in the water. Well, I hope them folks is right. Gotta get back to Snake Doctor's. Get his money while he's still up at my place with Kiz's remains. Get his money and then the rest will be easy. I'll make for the deep timber. Cross country to the river. Make it by tomorrow sundown. Hire me a shanty boater to ferry me to the Arkansas side. Get me a haircut and catch a train for somewhere else. But gotta get Snake Doctor's money first.
Snake Doctor's cabin was dark and empty when Jafe reached it, and he needed light for his search. There were a few dull embers in the fireplace, and he threw on some kindling, but it didn't light. Very well, he knew where the chink was. He'd find it in the dark. He scrabbled at the logs, felt some bark give, felt the clay mortar crumble under his fingernails. Here it was, a hole big enough for a man's arm. He plunged his hand into it, touched something slick and smooth, and then something sharp plunged into his thumb. At that moment, the fire flickered to life. Jafe yanked his hand out of the hole, saw two tiny bleeding punctures at his thumb, and at the mouth of the hole stretched the wide-open jaws of a cottonmouth. It worked fast. He felt the pain leaping from his thumb to his hand, seeping up his arm. If he only had some liquor, if he had a fresh-killed chicken to slap on the wound, he had nothing. Then a sharp, horrible pain wrenched his heart. And a second, and there in the firelight, the huge cottonmouth poised in its crevice. Jafe leaped out of the shack, started blindly for the timber, staggered, stumbled, and pitched forward on his face. His open mouth full of weeds and muddy grass and stems. The cramping fingers of his outstretched right hand almost touching a reddish-black smear on the wet, trampled grass.
Good riddance, Bart Gravius, good riddance. I'd call it that, wouldn't you, Dr. Bradshaw?
Well, I reckon there's sort of a rough justice in the way he died. Look, his hand reaching out just about touches the blood where his woman fell. This has been quite a night, Davis. I just examined the body of a man who appears to have been killed by snakebite. Good and quick, too, judging by the evidence.
Well, Doc, ain't that the way a cottonmouth always does kill a man, sudden like? I've always heard tell.
Never mind what you heard. I'm going by the facts. I've been practicing medicine in this county for going on to 46 years. And I tell you that in all my life I've never known but 2 or 3 people actually being bitten by water moccasins. And until tonight, I never had personal knowledge of anybody dying from the bite of any kind of a snake.
Hey, what's going on over there, Doc?
Is that Mourner boy kicking up that fuss?
Yeah, he's a no good just like his folks.
Hey, what's your trouble, Tip?
Finny here's went out in his head.
I'm going to kill a snake that bit in my pond. And then I'm going to give that snake doctor a whooping for keeping a reptile in his place.
Your paw got just what is his due, Finny. The snake doctor ain't to blame none.
He's a hoodoo devil.
Now, look here, boy. Mr. Rives promised all his savings, nearly $100 to pay for burying your mother decent. That's how much he thought of her. Now go on home, behave yourself.
Now, go on, Finny. Ain't no reason for you hanging
Somebody
on
ought to kill that guy that bit my paw, and I'm going to do it.
Hey, Doc, just a minute ago you started to say something about snake bite not to kill him. Well, how you account for Jafer?
Well, the late Jafe Mourner had a rotten bad heart, David.
Oh, he sure did. Yesterday proves that.
Now, I don't mean in that sense. I mean there was an organic weakness. A curious thing, though, there was no swelling anywhere.
Well, there's them 2 marks on his thumb, them snake gashes like I've seen.
Well, that don't explain how... Huh? What's it?
It's Finny Mourner. He's in the cabin. That fool kid. Come on, Doctor. Probably shot somebody.
I shot at it. I shot at it, but I didn't hit it. It's going to get me like it got my paw.
Come on, Doc. Come on. He said he shot at something in the cabin. Come on.
I don't know. I don't see anything.
Well, Finny's had enough happen to him yesterday and today to upset even a bright boy. So we can't... Oh, there it is.
What?
That cottonmouth up there in that hole in the log.
Huh? Oh, that. The snake doctor told me about that varmint. Look at him closer, David.
Oh, no, sir.
Go ahead. It's just a stuffed snake.
Stuff?
Yeah. Snake doctor believes in precautions, 'cause that hole's where he hides his money. That snake could scare away anybody who didn't know it was stuffed. But just to be sure, old snake doctor lined the hole with coils of barbed wire.
Oh, I see. What, you think that them marks on Jeff's thumb he got off of the barbed wire, huh?
There could be. A lot stronger hearts than Jafe Mourner's would have stopped beating at a scare like that.
Well, I'll be switched. Old snake doctor's a cute one, ain't he?
Escape, produced by William N. Robeson and directed by Norman MacDonald, today brought you Snake Doctor by Irvin S. Cobb, adapted for radio by Fred Howard, with Bill Conrad as Jafe, Paul Frees as Finney, Ruth Parrott as Kizzy, Barton Yarver as Davis, Louis Van Rooten played Snake Doctor and Tip Bailey, while Fred Howard was the doctor. Alan Reed was heard as the narrator. The original musical score was conceived by Cy Feuer with Eddie Dunstetter at the console. Next week...
You were alone in a remote old-world village inhabited by cat people, and you are desired by a beautiful cat girl who wants your soul.
Next week, we escape with Algernon Blackwood's eerie story titled Ancient Sorceries. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.